Assalamu alaikum. Get to know your Lord. First part of the Right Belief series by Sheikh Karim Abu Zaid. This dynamic literary work of art's main goal is to revive an understanding the names and attributes of Allah. And understanding the name and attributes of Allah will elevate our faith, strengthen us, and keep us steadfast. This wonderful book is now available in an audiobook format and can be found free of charge on YouTube, channel Karim Abu Zaid. Get to know your Lord. You have nothing to lose.
You will make it through. The fitra is awake in you. With Quran and Sunnah by your side, here's a place where it will thrive. You will make it through. You will make it through. The fitra is awake in you. With Quran and Sunnah on his side, here's a place where it will thrive. You will make it through. With Quran and Sunnah on his side, here's a place where it will thrive. You will make it through.
To our Akida class, and this is, like I remind everyone often, this is of all the classes that we teach here at Sunnahfollowers, this is the most important class of all, because the bottom line, if your belief system is not correct, then you have a problem. If your belief system is not correct, then that means none of your good deeds will be accepted. And it's all about trying to accumulate as many good deeds as we can in this world so that we'll have a good ending. You know, that our in the hereafter, our ending in the hereafter will be good. And one of the things that we've been discussing here is how most Muslims are not aware, most English-speaking Muslims are not knowledgeable of the concept of wala wal bara. The concept of wala wal bara. This is part of the shahada. Oh yeah, it's part of the testimony of faith. But I don't know why not, but most Muslims in America are not aware of the concept of el wala wal bara. And they're not aware that it is a part of the shahada. And what that Arabic sentence refers to is our allegiance as Muslims. We testify every day that our allegiance is to Allah, to the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the religion of Islam, and to each other. That's it. We don't have allegiance to any country. Allah says the earth belongs to him. And as Muslims, we're able to live anywhere on this earth as long as we can practice our way of life openly. The earth belongs to Allah. So we don't pledge allegiance to a country. We don't pledge allegiance to a flag. We don't pledge allegiance to anything except Allah. Does everyone understand that? And that's what el-wala refers to, our allegiance. And the second part of that statement is el-bara. That means I'm going to disassociate. I'm going to disassociate with anything that comes between my belief system, my relationship with Allah. I'm going to disassociate or distance myself against anything that contradicts my Islamic values, my Islamic morality. And that's why none of you Muslims living in the West should be participating in any elections for president or rulers over your countries. Okay? Because Allah is clear in the Quran, and our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is clear from the authentic hadith, that a non-Muslim can never be a ruler over us, a leader over us, because they will never have your interests at heart. They will never have our interests at heart. They'll never give you a voice. I'm hearing a lot of American Muslims say, oh, I'm going to vote because I want to have a voice. You ain't got no voice. Allah tells you. He tells you that in the Quran, the non-Muslims will never listen to you. They'll never give you a voice. And that's something that all you Muslims should have learned, because most Muslims in America voted for Obama. And look what he did. He made fools out of each and every one of you. Because not only did he legalize LGBTQ, but he was the one that sent the weapons to Israel for the war over there now. So you would think that you guys would have learned from that. But no, we're hard-headed people. Okay, but you can't say you didn't know. Should Allah take your soul, he's going to say you knew that voting was haram. Because you heard people talk about it. That Layla Nashiba that you can't stand, she talked about it. You chose to not listen. She gave you the dalil. You chose to refute it and reject it. So understand, guys, every choice that we make in this world comes with consequences. The consequences will either be good or bad. And you can't lie to Allah. You can't fool him, trick him. When those angels of death pull your soul, they're going to let you know if you go into paradise. They're going to let you know if you go into hell. You will know as soon as they pull your soul. And they're going to throw it all back up in your face. They're going to tell you you can't lie your way out. Okay, so, allegiance and disassociation. If American Muslims understood that concept, they wouldn't even be thinking about voting in any presidential elections. Just like if we understood that concept, we wouldn't celebrate any non-Muslim holidays. It's not a matter of law of whether it's an act of worship or not. It's a matter of where's your allegiance. For example, 4th of July, where's your allegiance? It's not a question of, is this an action of worship? It's a question of, is your allegiance to the early settlers of America? Or is your allegiance to Allah, to the Prophet, and to the religion of Islam? Does this have anything to do with Islam? Or does this have something to do with non-Muslims? Who's your allegiance to? Everybody understand that? Most things in life fall in that category of allegiance. Dreadlocks. Let's talk about locks. A lot of people now take the word dread away and y'all still call it a lock, but it's the same thing. You just let your hair knot up. You don't comb it. You let your hair grow and get long and knot up to the point where you can't run a comb through it. It's haram. The Prophet Muhammad is clear. He said, anyone who has hair, you must be able to run a comb through it. You have to be able to comb through it. You can't comb through a lock. It's haram. The Prophet was clear. The jinn let their hair lock up and knot up. We can't walk around looking like the jinn. Allah speaks about the zakum tree and that grows out of the pit of hell. Allah says in the Quran, the shoots of its fruit is like the head of jinns. And the Prophet explained what that meant. He said the jinns don't comb their hair. They let their hair grow and lock and knot up. So the fruit is like that. Subhanallah. And the Prophet tells us to be the opposite of the jinn. So we give you all this clear evidence and you still don't want to listen. You want to play the name game. Well, it's my culture. Astaghfirullah. When you declare la ilaha illallah, are you declaring allegiance to your culture, or are you embracing a new culture called Islam? And that's what I want all the Muslims listening to me to understand. Our culture, once you embrace this beautiful way of life, or if you are born and raised upon this beautiful way of life, this is our culture. Islam is not just a religion, it's a culture, it's a way of life. Dreads, locks. Locks are not a part of our culture. That's the culture of the kafir. That's the culture of the jinn. That's the jinn's culture, to let their hair lock and knot up where they can't run a comb through it. That's not our culture. The prophet said our culture. What did he tell the companions when they were walking around with dreadlocks? Dreadlocks is what trifling people been wearing since Allah made Adam and Eve. What did he tell the men when he saw them with their hair and locked up in knots? He said, that ain't our culture. He said, our culture is this. Anyone who has hair, let him comb through it on a regular basis. Let him oil it, wash it, take care of it. That's our culture. So when you convert to Islam, if you have locks in your hair, you got to cut them out. You got to get rid of them. You can't let your hair just grow and do that. You got to be able to run a comb through it. You can't comb through a dreadlock. You can call it lock, pot, socky dock, whatever it is. You can't comb through it. So you have to adapt the Islamic culture now of cutting that crap out, washing your hair clean, and oiling and combing your hair on a regular basis. That's the culture of Islam. This is al-wala, okay? Our allegiance is to Islam, not to Kafirism, not to Rastafarianism, not to Africanism, not to that. That's not our culture. Does everyone understand that? Most Muslims don't. And that's sad. Just like it's not my culture to have sex out of wedlock. I had to answer that question from a non-Muslim recently. Why come you don't have a boyfriend? Because it's not my culture. I told her just plain simple, it's not my culture. I said, I'm a Muslim. And in my culture, we don't have boyfriends. We get married. Simple answer. That's the answer. It's not my culture. Sister Layla, why come you don't go out and get drunk? Why come you don't party? My answer is, it's not my culture. That's not my culture. I'm a Muslim. My culture, we don't party. We don't get drunk. We don't smoke weed. We don't have sex out of wedlock. It's not a part of my culture. El-wala, well-bara. Y'all better learn your culture as a Muslim. All that other stuff is for the birds. Sister Layla, did you celebrate Juneteenth? No, that's not my culture. It's the day that Black people were freed. And it's not my culture. I'm a Muslim. I celebrate the Eid al-Adha and the Eid al-Fitr. I have nothing to do with that. That's tribalism. And in my culture, we don't deal in tribalism. Okay? So we have to understand that when our culture as Muslims is Islam. So once you understand that, then you'll find it easy to implement al-wala wal-bara, which is allegiance and disassociation. Layla, you just had a birthday last month. Somebody told me recently. I said, oh, really? I forgot. I had a birthday last month. They said, what do you mean you don't know that your birthday was July 6th? July 6th was your birthday, Layla. You don't know your birthday? I said, no, it's not my culture to celebrate it. I said, I know my birthday, my date of birth, but it's not my culture to acknowledge it in that way. I said, so I don't celebrate it, so I forgot. Since it's not my culture to celebrate birthdays, I forgot that I had a birthday last month. Okay. It's just not my culture. So we have to learn what's meant by my culture. My culture is our religion, our way of life. Islam, my way of life. My culture is total submission to Allah. And that entails obeying him and what he commanded us to obey him in, and staying away from the things that he commanded us to stay away from. That's our culture as Muslims. Everybody understand that? And so today, what we're going to do for this class, we're moving on to the next chapter. We talked about elections. We talked about politics, living in America, dealing with the politics here. We talked about how the only elections that we can participate in as Muslims are elections such as council meetings. Because if I can be a city council member, because that represents me, the people locally, and I can run for a certain platform. I'm running to instill the right to not use a pronoun in school. I'm running for vote for me. And I will make it so that our children don't have to use pronouns, that they can identify to being what Allah created them to be. So positions like council members we can run for, and we can vote for too. If there's a person advocating something that doesn't contradict Islam, like garbage day or that type of thing, or justice, we can participate in those type of local elections. But a president, no. He's not going to represent me. He's not giving me a voice. Okay? Islam is not on their agenda in a good way. It's on his agenda, but it's in a bad way. Allah done told us they will always try to ruin and destroy us. So why would I participate in their elections? None of these candidates are going to represent Islam. None of these candidates have got my interest or any interest of Islam at heart. So, we disassociate. Plus, they're kafir anyway. All right. So we covered elections and politics. So now we're going to move on to the next chapter. And this chapter speaks about how to implement al-wala wal-bara, allegiance and disassociation, living in a non-Islamic country when it comes to our business transactions. And this is a hot topic today too, because we want to know why Allah has sent war to us. We've transgressed all his laws. We've transgressed all his rules. And Allah tells us in the Quran, and our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us in many hadiths, that whenever we transgress the limits of Allah, whenever we fail to fulfill the obligations that Allah has imposed upon us, whenever we adapt ways other than Allah's ways, he will send war. So the war is here. We brought it on ourselves, and Allah ain't taking it away. Okay, that's just how it is. It's going to spread like it's doing. It's in Bangladesh now. It's going to eventually get here to America. Oh, yeah, it's been in Africa. Like the prophet said, the war will all the fitan that affects this ummah will begin in the east and work its way around to the rest of the world, to the west. All right, so we're going to talk about business because we violated the laws of Allah every day with this. And let me put the PowerPoint up on the screen. Okay, the concept of allegiance and disassociation in Islam, as we know, holds significant relevance also to business and economic transactions too. Many business owners operating in a country like America, we face many unique challenges, including a lack of understanding and respect for our Islamic values and principles when it comes to business. And again, Allah emphasizes in the Quran the importance of us abiding again by his laws, even when it comes to our business. Just like in elections, Allah tells us in the Quran that we don't participate. That we don't take the non-Muslims as leaders and protectors over us, because all they want is our ruin. Well, he also mentions about business too. He says, "Oh, you who believe, do not consume one another's money unjustly. Instead, only in a lawful way and by mutual consent." So Allah has made the rules and laws for us to live by, not just in regarding marriage, not just regarding divorce, not just regarding how to eat, how to drink, but also in our business transactions as well. And one of the number one challenges that we face is usury. We live in America. And just because we live here does not make interest lawful. It's haram. We have the hadith, whereas the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mu'ad as the first ambassador, the first messenger to Yemen to teach the people about Islam. And he told Mu'ad, he said, "Oh Mu'ad, you are going to a country that deals in interest. Everybody deals in interest." He said, "But just because everyone else deals in interest, do not allow that to cause you to." He said, "Stay away from interest." So the same applies to us. I understand that there are some imams here in America telling their people, "Oh, we live in America. It's different. We can deal in interest." Well, this authentic hadith I just narrated to you, and the source is Bukhari, slaps that out the ballpark. It doesn't matter where you're going to. Like I told you guys, there's nothing that we as Muslims today in 2024 are encountering that those original companions haven't. They dealt with war. They dealt with interest, all of that. Nothing is new. So just like the Prophet told Mu'ad and Abu Musa Ash'ari and all the rest of them that went with him, he said, "You all stay away from interest. It's haram. Do not allow yourself to be suckered into dealing with that." And that's the same with us. You know, it's hard, but we have to stay away from it. Listen to what Allah says and the interpretation, the meaning. "Those who consume interest cannot stand on the day of judgment, except as a person stands who Shaitan is beating into insanity. And this is because they say trade is just like interest, but Allah has permitted trade and he's forbidden interest. So you can't put the two together. You can't say it's just business. In other words, we can do business as Muslims, but whatever business transactions we engage in, they have to be free of interest. But how many people adhere to that? That's the question. How many Muslim businesses adhere to that? Very few. For example, how many Muslims here, don't say who you are, have started your business by taking out loans? Muslim business owners are forbidden to take out loans or financing options that involve interest. Okay? I know a lot of Muslims who opened up stores and they took out loans for that. This is haram. What does that mean? That means all your profits, all the money you make is illegal because you got it all, acquired it on interest. Okay, we can't take out business loans like that. All right. Now, of course, a lot of you might say, but Sister Layla, what about the pressing need? Well, this ain't a pressing need. Who said it's a pressing need for you to own your own business? You can go out and get a job. Okay? That's something that you want to do. It's not something that you have to do. So you don't call that a pressing need. Now, a car is different. A car is a necessity. You have to have a car to get around in America. If you don't have a car, it's dangerous, man. You're going to get popped 9 times out of 10. Oh, yeah. America ain't no safe place to live. I don't know who told you it was, but it ain't. You got to have a car to get around. So not that many people, unless you have good credit, you can lease. Leasing is a great option. Okay. But unless if you don't have a 700 credit score, you can forget about leasing. So what do you do then? You have no choice but to, buy a car. And who has $10,000 to put down on a car? So in that case, you may be forced to have to take a loan. That's the pressing need. A car is a necessity. But just to start your own business, that's not a necessity. To buy a house, that's not a necessity. You can rent like I do. I'll never own a home. What's the point? I rent. I got an apartment. I ain't got time for that. That's interest. Okay? If there's another alternative, then it's different. That's the pressing need theory. This ain't no pressing need to buy a house. It's not a pressing need to take a student loan either. There's other options out there. Who said you had to go to a private school? You can go to a state university. Every state has a university. The tuition is cheaper. You can take out grants. Grants are not loans. Okay? Who said you had to get a PhD? If you ain't got the money to pay for a PhD, then who said you had to get a PhD? Get a bachelor's degree. Subhanallah. So again, alternatives. The pressing need only falls in if there is no other choice. If it's something that has to be a necessity. But unfortunately, we're taking out financial loans for everything. This is haram. For those of you who don't understand, Allah says He has declared war. He has declared war against the people who deal in interest. So this is an example as to how we transgress the limits of Allah here living in the Western world. And they do it in the East too. By the way, they do this. They take out loans in the Arabic countries too. Another example as to how we fail to implement wala wal bara in business transactions, especially here in America. This entails discrimination. America's the most racist country in the world. Ain't nobody gonna deny that. Okay? America discriminates worse than any other country. America stereotypes too. America can give you a negative stereotype based on your religious identity. So we got to implement el wala wal bara. Some of you Muslims are radical. A lot of you Muslims are radical. You're a business owner or you are an HR person and you have candidates coming in applying for a job. All of them have the same references and the same background, but you want to discriminate because you don't like Jews. Because this man here has a Jewish name, you decide you ain't going to hire him. Is that Islam? Does Islam teach us, to discriminate based on our personal likes? Well, Islam emphasizes the importance of justice and equality. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, none of you will have faith and be a true believer until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. That's dealing with the Muslims. Look how many of us discriminate against Muslims. Do you know how many of the women in my website, their children, they tried to put their children in Islamic school, but the Arabs discriminated because their children are black, because they're African, and they didn't want their Arab daughters or their Arab boys around their African children. Oh yeah, this is a big problem in the Muslim schools here. Discrimination, molestation is happening, and all other kind of crap. That's why I tell y'all, homeschool your children. Check out safausa.org. That's an international virtual homeschool program from kindergarten through 12th grade. That way your children can get an Islamic education and a secular education in the safety of their home without being discriminated, without being molested by the Muslim teachers, the Arabic people who make fun of you because you don't speak Arabic or because you're black. Oh my God, yeah, that's a whole nother topic. Big problem in America. How many of us do that? You will never be a believer until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. You want to deny these people from being around Muslims because they're black, because you have a stereotype where you don't want your daughters around them? Are you crazy? So we're supposed to be people of ethics as Muslims. Allah taught us how to deal in the public, how to deal in private, and how to get along with each other. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I was sent to teach you good manners, good ethics, good morality. And by teaching you good manners, good ethics, good morality, I'm teaching you Islam. And the source of that hadith is Sahih Bukhari. So now what we're going to do in this book, Sheikh Kareem, he gives perspectives as to how to address the hurdles, that we encounter as business women and businessmen living here in America. And let's look to see what he suggests. Number one, balance. Islam is all about balance. In the competitive business landscape, the drive for financial success often leads organizations to ethical turning points. For example, how many of our organizations indulge in this discrimination? Even though it's supposed to be against the American policies. Look at the example that Kareem used. He said, take, for instance, a real estate development firm confronted with an opportunity to acquire land. The deal involves purchasing land from economically disadvantaged owners who may not fully understand the value of the land that they have. But your boss tells you, don't worry about that. Go in there and make them an offer of $20,000, even though they don't understand that their land is worth $100,000. We can't do that in Islam. We have to be honest in our business dealings. We can't go in and offer and pay a person $20,000 so we can buy their land when that land we know is worth $100,000. We can't play on the ignorance of others. But unfortunately, this happens a lot. This happens a lot with the Muslims. We have become like the non-Muslims. Instead of us being just, instead of us being honest and fair, we're just like them. Remember, we talked about one of the signs of the last hour is that truthfulness will disappear. You won't be able to find anyone who's honest in their business dealings. You'll have to travel to a different state or a different country to find somebody that you can trust to handle your business affairs. Okay, so that's an example. Another example, you have a marketing agency that decides to align its practices with Islamic guidelines. While the leadership is committed to this, the creative team is unsure. So what do? Well, in a case like this, then you're going to have to educate the people, okay? You're going to have to educate them. Let me give an example that I can relate to. When I was with the union of my job, when we were in contract negotiations, I was on the negotiating team. I gave a suggestion. I said, I want us to put a memorandum of understanding here. And let's include in the memorandum that any policies, any rules, any guidelines created by management that contradicts this contract is null and void. When I made that suggestion, of course, the negotiating team, the union's team was all for it. They say, Layla, do you think you can get that to pass? I said, watch me. So we had to sit down with management. But I brought it out. I said, look, we allowed you the one that wanted this policy about lateness, tardiness. Look how many employees come to work late with all kind of excuses. We allowed you to put in here that if a person comes to work late, that their time can be docked. Would you like for us to counter? How would you feel, I told him, if I had to represent someone who was late for a reason that is really good and you don't have to dock them now? How would you like that? They said, oh, we don't like that. So you're right. Let's put it in here. I said, yes, because long as it's in the contract, you got what you want in this contract. Even we, the union, even we can't come up with rules. Even we can't come up with conditions. Even we can't come up with guidelines to overrule it. So that's how I convinced management to sign off on that. And so in the state, that is still in our contract. In the state of Ohio, no state agency can come up with any rules, any policies that contradict that book. Okay, so you're going to have to sit down if you want to implement, and I based that on the Quran. I did. I put that in there, just like the Quran is the book that we live by as Muslims. I told them this contract will be the Quran on the job. You can't violate this contract, just like I can't violate my Quran. Okay? So you have to, sit down, and come up with ideas and strategies like that are el-walad, and all the stuff in our contract is in right there with the Quran. I mean, my contract for the Ohio was just like a Quran. Seriously. Everything was just fair and good. But it's hard to do that. So now let me give you guys a quiz, because a lot of us, don't have the time. We don't want to take the time. We don't want to take the energy to do the right thing. We'll sit there and sell our souls for the money, sell our souls for whatever, and not thinking about the price that comes with it in the hereafter. So now let's give you guys a quiz here. Here's the question. You want to start your own business, and to do so requires taking a loan. Is this lawful? Why or why not? Come on, guys. We just talked about it.
No, this is not lawful because owning a business or trying to get a loan for a business requires interest, and that is around, and taking out that loan is not a pressing need.
Exactly. It's not a pressing need. Exactly. That was an easy question. Real easy to answer. What about this one? Your company is hiring, but tells you to interview everyone that applies for the job, but to only hire a certain race of people. What do you do in a situation like that? You're the HR person. Your company is telling you, interview everybody that's applying for the job, but I don't want you to hire nobody who belongs to this particular race. What would you do? Is this against Islam? If it is, why? And how would you handle it? This requires...
You would have to separate yourself from that because it's against Islam. It's not fair. It's showing favoritism. So I'm HR, but I would have to separate myself from that part of it and do another part.
Okay. Okay, good job. And Ms. Jackson said I would tell them it's discrimination. Not only is it illegal, it's also against Islam. Same thing. Good job. Good job. Exactly. You tell them I can't do that. I'm not doing the hiring. You don't have to quit. You tell them that I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that hiring. I'm not doing that. You know, and they can't fire you for it either. That's against the law. Okay. But you tell them, no, I'm not doing that. You have to disassociate. You tell them, no, I can't be a part of this. If you want somebody to hire just a certain race, then you get somebody else to do your interviewing. You get somebody else to do this. I'm not going to be a part of this. This is illegal. And technically, you can be sued as the company for doing this. I could report you to the EEO Commission. I could report you to the Civil Rights Commission, and you can be fired for doing that. That's what you tell them. That's what I would tell them. Okay? And normally, guys, most companies are not stupid. Like my job wasn't stupid. They wouldn't have me interview people because they knew that I wouldn't discriminate. I was going to hire based on qualifications. So they would say, oh, Layla, you can sit this one out. You ain't got to interview nobody. And I always knew because they was getting ready to do some discrimination. They wanted to bring in all white people, no blacks, no Arabs, no Mexicans. I always knew because they would say, Layla, honey, you've had a hard week. Sit this one out. We'll get somebody else to do the interviews. Every time they did that, I knew. I said, watch, they're not hiring no minority. It's going to be some Caucasian, some Russian. Oh, yeah. The state of Ohio hired a bunch of Russians. You know, they're bringing these foreigners. They ain't going to hire no minorities. They're going to bring in a bunch of foreign Russians. You know, subhanAllah. All right, let me see. I think that was, yeah.